friends. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Caldwell, and I'm so happy you're here. Each episode, I take some time to chat with fellow artists about life, faith, and the impact of the arts. Hey friends, happy December. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we're now rolling full steam ahead into the Christmas season. Wherever you may be, I hope this conversation is an encouragement to you today. We're taking a brief pause on our Global Impact series to share this special episode with Gabe Baker to kick off the month of December. Gabe is a singer-songwriter and cellist who is currently on tour for King and Country. Their A Drummer Boy Christmas tour is happening now, and if you happen to be near one of the cities included in the tour, be sure to check it out. This is such a fun and rich conversation as Gabe and I chat about his journey. Gabe is a former college football athlete, has worked as a civil engineer and government policy strategist, has appeared on multiple television platforms, such as NBC's American Ninja Warrior, Netflix's The Ultimate Beastmaster, and The Bachelor Listen to Your Heart, and is currently living in Nashville and working on a variety of collaborative projects as a musician, singer-songwriter, and storyteller. I was so inspired to hear Gabe share about how faith has been the through line in his journey. We cover a range of topics, such as identity, community, goal setting, and stewarding a platform with authenticity and purpose. Enjoy my conversation with Gabe Baker. Hello, Gabe Baker. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast.
Thank you, Rachel. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you. We were chatting before we hit record, and now I'm like, the official intro. But
the official intro, yes. And you've been so patient with me. It's been like several months in the works, and I haven't been super prompt with scheduling. So
it's all good.
Happy this is working.
It's not like you have anything going on, you know,
oh, no, not
keeping
at
you
all.
busy.
Not at all.
So yeah, it's going to be so fun. So I'm here with Gabe Baker, and he is Texas-bred, Nashville-based, multi-talented singer-songwriter and cellist. That's a lot of words, but so cool.
It's a lot of words.
People need to check out your music, which we'll talk about more, but it's just so good. And you've got a lot of interest, and I know we'll dive into that a little bit later, but college football athlete. You also have had a career in like civil engineering and government policy strategy and all sorts of things. And then a little side note is that you've been on several television programs, including American Ninja Warrior, Netflix's The Ultimate Beastmaster, and then The Bachelor's Listen to Your Heart, which is awesome, among other things. But yeah, So people may even recognize your name or your face. Yeah, just so cool. So many fun experiences. And then made your way to Nashville and have been pursuing a career in the music industry. And most recently, joining in with For King and Country as part of their band, which can't wait to hear about. So yeah, that's just sort of the highlight reel. But do you want to share just a little bit more about kind of who is Gabe and maybe some things that, you know, are part of like what makes you who you are?
Yeah, awesome. That's a very, very good synopsis. I always have different angles in which I introduce myself because it's kind of like, it's just kind of random. I look at my resume, I'm like, yeah, I'm just exploring, you know. Right. I'm 10 years out of college, which is crazy now. Yeah. This year, coming in next spring will be 10 years, which is crazy to think about. Time's fun.
That's about where I'm at too. And it's just kind of surreal.
Time just drifts by as it does, or flies by. But I think you hit the nail on the head for a lot of things. Yeah, I'm a proud representative of Texas wherever I go. I love Texas so much. But yeah, I was born in Dallas, grew up in San Antonio, moved to Houston for college. I went to Rice University, go Owls, proud alum. And, you know, I guess a big foundational thing, and you having me on your podcast, I'm really grateful for it. In this space of faith in the arts is that really the through line for my life and the foundation of it is birthed in really living in the graces of God, you know, through Jesus. And based on kind of your questions and thoughts along the way, I'm happy to fill in the gaps with my parents. Full-time Christian ministry most of my life before I was born. We're overseas missionaries in South Africa and planted and led churches there. Did some work in India as well. And they moved back to the States, to Dallas, right before I was born in 91.
Okay.
My older brother and older sister were born in Johannesburg while they were there. And so they're in Dallas leading a church. They moved to San Antonio shortly after I was born to lead a church there. And so my house is just, very spiritually covered, gratefully, and just in a context of learning to love God, really serving and loving others, and just really take on that responsibility of being one to be an ambassador of Jesus. And so I'm grateful to have embraced that for what it is. Being a preacher's kid, a ministry kid, comes with so many layered things, and different people, personalities have different responses to that journey. And I'm grateful to have really kept in stride with the things that God has taught me through my parents. And, I went to seminary, and so I got a master's in theology right after college, and really have lived a life of ministry as well, leading different ministries through college and after college. And so, I'll add that as the layer onto the other activities as really the bedrock of the decision-making, the values that I really strive to hold to.
Yes, that's so good and super helpful for just okay, this is that backdrop to everything, or like you said, the foundation for everything that we see in your bio and everything like that.
Yeah, I do my best. Yeah.
So cool. And that's really powerful, just the impact of your parents' faith and the legacy that has had in your life. And I'm curious to hear kind of how some of those experiences early on, going to Rice and being on the football team there, and then kind of after that, pursuing your master's, all of those things. Maybe do you want to just hit on some of the highlights and how that has shaped you and kind of led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I'd love to. I love reflecting on my time in college and stuff, because they were so cherished. I really would live them over again. I worked so hard. I'm grateful to have gotten the opportunity. I was on full scholarship to play football at Rice, and was a student. Being a student athlete in a collegiate setting is so special. It's really challenging because of just all the things that you're exposed to and all the things, for better or for worse. I think Rice, you being in Houston, I'm sure you know about Rice, and you being in the education system as well. I mean, it's a really, really difficult, high academic school. And
it's definitely top tier, I would say.
It's top tier school. So the expectations are high performing there. And then playing Division I sports is another incredible feat to take on. And so coupling the two only makes you better. You don't sleep a lot, but you work really hard, and you come away with a lot of great memories if you really do it right and soak it in. So, when I think back on my time in college specifically, and playing football and doing a lot of ministry work, and when I moved to Houston, I knew I didn't want to go too far from home. Mm-hmm. It was in between Texas A&M and Rice for football.
Both great options.
Both great options. Both, relatively similar distance from San Antonio, where my parents were at the time. I was the last kid out the house. And I just felt connected to going to Houston. I had a church family that I knew I was going to connect right into when I moved to Houston. So that was really helpful to have that.
That is huge in college, to have that connection huge. A place to land, like a family.
Yeah. And I really think of my journey in faith. I really stepped into my faith. I was baptized the day before basically the day before my sophomore year in high school. Okay. And, always just a formative process, of course, but I really feel like that was really stepping into my faith, and being filled with the Spirit really showed through the rest of my high school years. I started leading a Bible talk on campus and was leading the Fellowship of Christian Athletes the rest of my time in high school. And it was a very independent faith growing experience finishing out high school. And so transitioning into college, I really was grateful to feel confident and comfortable who I was and what was instilled within me, and knowing what I knew, the young Gabe, So I was excited. I was really determined and focused. And I'm grateful to really have had that foundation going into college. And I just share that as a point of emphasis, because it's easy to having a strong community around you is really hard to find. And I'm grateful. I think when I moved to Nashville was the first real experience of being more on my own and starting real fresh, because when I moved to Houston, I was able to kind of really dig in really quickly to a faith community. So I just kind of can understand the experience of not having a spiritual community to lean on or to help you navigate things. And yeah, college is wild. You went through college and it's just, there's so much that can happen.
Yes, so true.
Having a foundation is everything. And I think it really instilled within me through college, going from college, that, man, if you don't have your foundation, going through all the things you go through, you're going to be tossed by the waves of life every which way.
So true.
And I'm grateful to have had, a deep foundation for what it was, with cracks and things, but to have waded through the storms and made my way to, just kind of coming out of the difficulties of college and the challenge that it was with a firm faith still was everything. So I'm not kind of jumping around your question that kind of way, but it definitely has instilled just that understanding of what it means to have my independent connection with God and what that means to have a foundation.
Right.
Going through all the things that I did go through and learning and working hard and stuff.
Yes. Thanks for sharing that. That's so good. So I'm just curious, how did you end up on American Ninja Warrior or get into that whole scene?
I will start out by saying that a lot of the things I've explored in my life is kind of leads on this idea of just being a constant learner and not being afraid to explore and push my limits.
Nice.
And I've enjoyed the adventures of life. And I was an environmental engineer by degree in college.
Okay.
Played football, of course, as I mentioned, and tried to go professionally football wise. And as I was wrapping up college, I just finished, I had a close friend of mine in Houston who was in the Ninja Warrior world. He had been on the show before. He understood the training, all the different things to get into this space. And I told him, hey, if I don't make it to the NFL, I'm going to start training Ninja Warrior with you just to switch it up. Because, it's fascinating. Like I played football for almost since elementary school. So it's literally my whole life, for over a decade of my life.
Yeah. For
student athletes in general, collegiate athletes or professional athletes, it's when you leave your sport, it can be very traumatic and very shocking. And it opens up so much, and you got to be ready for it. And I'm grateful to have had ideas and inspirations. And I was just very mentally open and ready to kind of transition out of that life if that's what God wanted for me. And so I feel like he answered my prayer in a way that may have not been what I wanted, but is where I need to go. And so transitioning out of football, all that to say, started training Ninja Warrior that summer. It was summer 2015. And it humbles anyone. It's a very difficult style of training.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was just, again, exploring.
I'm like, oh my
it's
goodness.
So difficult. Yeah. And it's possible, but it takes some real hard focus to really mess up your hands and build some deep calluses in your hands and stuff.
Oh, man.
Develop the skills and the confidence and so much to it. But I got into it, started training, and I was grateful. You audition for it every year. You send in a video audition to the producers, and they'll call you if they want to feature you on it. And so I was grateful to get a call for that spring of 2016. I was season 8 of American Ninja Warrior, and I competed on that show. And they didn't show me in that season on TV. Okay. But what ended up happening is that they ended up the producers pushed me to a show that was on Netflix, The Ultimate Beastmaster that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And it was a newer show at the time. And they asked me if I wanted to travel for that, which was kind of cool. So I made my way on that show, and I had an actual feature on that show, which is very cool. But that's kind of how I got into Ninja Warrior, just exploring the curiosities of outside of football as a competitor. Yeah. And I made it on.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yes. And okay, I kind of want to touch on something that you said as far as, transitioning out of a sport that you've been doing for a long time. Or I know as a dancer, that's a big transition for a lot of people when they transition out of being a professional dancer.
Mm-hmm. Same thing.
Same thing. So I'm just curious, for someone that maybe in that season or they're about to be in that season, any thoughts on how to do that in a healthy way, I guess?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind immediately is understanding identity and having that conversation with yourself of we aren't what we do. I think that's the biggest thing with identity. A part of who we are is what we do, but that's not who we are. Like the things we do, the jobs we hold, the professions we have, the dreams we chase, it's not who we are. And I think if we are completely convinced and really inundated with our identity being connected to the things that we do and the skills that we have, as that's all it. When something changes physically in that way, it's going to strip you bare. And I think having that conversation with yourself and knowing that, and that's the beauty of really having a foundation and the greatness that God is and having our image and our likeness divinely placed in God. And that's something that's greater than anything that this world can give us. And knowing that who we are, the things we do is who we are, but that's not the foundation of it. And so being rooted in really understanding that the divine value that we have, the dignity that God establishes in us, all these things that are rooted in just the image likeness of us, I think can help prepare one to transition to something else, whatever that calling is outside of, even if that one thing in your life is so deeply ingrained in you, skill, passion wise, if it does fade for whatever reason, I think it has everything to do with knowing that you are truly ultimately far more created in an image that's bigger than what you do. So that conversation of identity is the biggest thing for me. I think that's made the difference.
Yeah, that's so good. Super helpful. You know, I felt that. And so I really appreciate those words, because I think it is something that the more you can kind of, like you said, have that conversation with yourself and with God before you're in that spot, like that's going to help, you know, that transition.
Yeah, it'll help it out. Yeah,
for sure.
But it's still brutal. It's still
brutal.
It's still, yeah. And you have to live with the pain of transitioning out of something you love to do and that you're really good at. And if that happens, whatever that does, you know, yeah.
Still a loss.
Still a loss. And then, I think the other thing I'll tag on to is that I think there's always being open to what's next. As long as we have breath in our lungs, there's always something next for that God has in store for us. And I think being open to the possibilities and holding on to the hope of what God has for you today, I think opens the brain and can help the heart heal through transitions like that, you know?
Yes. I love that. Amen.
Yeah, it's real. It's so tough.
For sure. So real. So I guess you want to just kind of fill in that middle ground of post getting your master's, and then, you know, you're working. So you were working just kind of a typical 9 to 5-ish job for a while, right?
Yep. I was, civil engineer. I was a roadway design engineer at a firm in Houston. It was an international firm, but based where I was right downtown, right off of Fannin Street, Main Street in Fannin, downtown.
Nice.
Great firm. Was there for about 3 years. And right as I transitioned out of that job, I finished my master's in theology. And that was cool timing. And I had some great relationships from college that I was leaning on, and wanted to get into something that was more people leaning, more civic engaging directly instead of the technical side of work. And so I shifted over to the public sector and was working for the Harris County judge then, Judge Ed Emmett. I'm not sure if you remember him or his name. It's okay if not. But
not really.
He was
That's okay.
previous county judge. In Texas, the executives of the counties are called county judges. So they're not technically like a judge. But I always describe to people, it's like the mayor of the county that Houston is.
Gotcha.
So for Harris County, Houston, Texas, I was like a flood control policy advisor was my title. And
that is definitely needed.
As you know,
Houston.
Rachel, that's right. Houston is a flood prone area. It's the main challenging thing that the region faces. Houston is designed to flood, so that's why it's a big problem.
Yep.
It's built, it's sub sea level. It's built on old school, just rice farms. Anyway, so I jumped into a role that was focused on an issue that's very, very prominent for the Houston region. And it was great. And so I was working there for about 2.5 years. My first boss, he didn't get reelected in the first midterms. And so I was able to stay on board with my next boss still. Very different. It was different side of the political aisle, different culture in the office and everything. But I was still working through that. And I stayed on with that job when COVID hit and through COVID up until I moved to Nashville of 2020. So I was in that office, in that role, more or less. I kind of changed roles a little bit. But I was in that office working for the county for, about 2.5 years until I moved to Nashville. I felt the calling to dive into the entertainment life.
That's awesome. Yeah. So speaking of, how did that transition go down, I guess, to bring you to Nashville?
Oh, yeah. I always enjoy sharing about it. It's wild. It's already 3 years ago. And so much has happened in a short amount of time. But at the end of 2019, my older brother had moved down to Houston. He was up in Dallas. He went to school for music. Great musician, was my music mentor. moved down to Houston to be with me and my parents. We're living in Missouri City there, at the house, southwest side of Houston. And unfortunately, he started going through just some really, really difficult challenges in his mental health. And they started to get worse and worse the year and change that since he had moved to Houston. And at the same time, my mom's health started to decline. She had a very ambiguous journey with a weird tumor condition that ended up being cancerous. And at the end of 2019, his health was at a really bad place. My mom's health was at a bad place. At the same time, I got reached out to be cast on this Bachelor show, which was a pilot effort in their Bachelor franchise. And it was supposed to be a music spinoff. Everyone was going to be musicians on the show, half guys, half girls. And it was supposed to be they pitched it to us as a music focused show with the component of dating, if you will, and finding love in that world. And I'm never opposed to opportunities if it feels right and I feel connected to it. And unfortunately, my mom passed away at the end of 2019, and my brother, he had been, in the journey that he was going through and battling things, he ended up packing up and kind of just leaving unannounced at the same time that my mom was passing. And just the difficulty of everything that he was bearing. And as I was deciding to, I'm living life and trying to just continue just to take steps forward and be with family. And it's kind of weird knowing what to do when things crash in ways in your life, like how do you keep living when the people around you are hurting the most? And that's really, really hard. And, me and everyone else, my family, were just trying to do our best. And at the same time, I had this very quirky TV show opportunity that I made through the casting process, and they really wanted me to be on the show. And me being in ministry leading positions in my church, you could probably imagine the very
diverse views.
Interesting conversations I had about, why would I want to be on the show? Is it the right thing to do? What example would I be setting? And for me, in the space of time, I felt like God opened up a very unique opportunity to teach me something. And he always does. And I felt confident enough to step into an unknown space with the faith and the love of God in me to be a light in that space and to explore that opportunity. And that's kind of as simple as I put it. So I chose to still go on it in the midst of everything. And it turns out to be one of the really monumental reasons for me jumping into my entertainment career, into the music. If I didn't go on the show, I wouldn't have felt called to step into this space. So it's all part of the journey God had for me, as unique as it was, but I think God presents us and takes us through things that are uncomfortable and not what we think, to teach us things that we can only learn by going through those experiences, even if it's something we don't want to experience. And so I think that's one major way I think of the lesson learned through something like that. It's like just trying to live a life of openness and surrender but also counting the costs as well in a healthy way.
Yeah.
In a wise way. Mm-hmm.
That's good. Yeah.
So that prompted the move.
Gotcha. Yeah. I like the phrase kind of, especially during the pandemic and since then, open hands, just the idea of, holding things with open hands. And my family experienced loss in 2021 as well, like early 2021, lost my sister, and kind of in the midst of all of that. So I understand that sense of like, I don't know, just your world is kind of turned upside down. And like, that's such an interesting, almost, I don't know what the word would be, dichotomy or, like a paradox kind of thing happening, like, these two extremes of a lot of grief and loss happening. And then also this new opportunity that's kind of,
it is the most confusing thing, right? Like, if you watch the latest Into the Spider-Verse?
No, I don't think I've seen the latest
animated one.
Not yet.
Well, but it is phenomenal. It's the best one. I'm a big superhero movie fan. So if you like the first one, you'll love this one because it's even better. Anyways, in that movie, they emphasize this concept of canon events, in that they're like these placeholder events in one's journey that you can't change it, because if you try to change it, it'll change everything else in your life, in your journey. I throw that funny analogy out there because I think of these really challenging, difficult moments that everyone experiences that really strike grief and loss and pain, as while we want to avoid them and we want to, we want things to be peaceful and joyous. Those difficult things, man, we can't go without them. They're formative and they're a necessary part of our lives. And even though you want to remove them, there's a mysterious way that God works through them. And even though he wants the best for us, sometimes the best for us is going through those difficult things.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of grasp.
It's hard to understand that. Yeah. And how good things can be birthed out of tragedy, or growth. And good doesn't mean comfortable, right? It doesn't mean favorable, but it means growth and formation. So
yes, so true. Have you heard of Dr. Kurt Thompson by any chance?
I have not.
Okay, that's okay. I just recently kind of heard him speaking on a podcast, and he talked about the word safe as well, and the idea that, we tend to think of safe as like where there's no danger, no pain, no anything like that. But he said ultimately safety is basically knowing that God has us and that we are connected to him, and that we can go through life, and there may be losses and painful things that happen, but when we have that anchor, then it's like we still are safe ultimately. That's
right. Yeah,
anyway, but
that's good.
So that reminded me of what you said. With it can be good without being what we think of as good sometimes.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, we are safe. Yeah, in the hands of God through it all. Yeah. So I think was that your question?
Yes, for sure. That was excellent. Yeah. So good. So good. We kind of got into like how you got to Nashville. And
That's right. How I got to Nashville.
Yes. What has professional singer-songwriter life, musician life in Nashville looked like for you?
Oh man. It's kind of hard to conceptualize like pursuing a life and being a songwriter, being a singer, like pursuing the music life. I just think about it in a way of like, where was my perspective of it before I moved here? And it was like, I don't even know what that means. Like to pursue a life as a musician is very, very kind of, it's very unique. It can only be done in certain contexts as well. And I lead with that because speaking specifically to Nashville, I'm being affirmed time and time again at how unique of a place it is because it has an insanely concentrated amount of people pursuing the same thing here. It's almost as if you're in Houston in the energy industry, but if you move to Nashville and you're being a songwriter, it's almost the equivalent in a way of like you're gonna find someone who works in that industry in almost any given room.
Wow,
which is cool. And so that allows for a career in this city to take root and to find direction if you're out there working and pounding the pavement and building relationships and focused on building this long range plan for what it looks like and developing a skill that really doesn't have immediate gratification or return on what you're doing. And it's so nebulous.
That's super tough. I feel like, especially these days, because I think the message we're getting all the time is, you should see results right away and that kind of thing. So
you're right. We live in this very like motivation oriented space of like, And that's it. I think it's just a life in the arts, you as a dancer, like it's a very long journey. You don't get paid very well. But there is insane amount of value to society and humankind through the arts that will not go away. AI can't even take it away.
Right. Yes.
It can't. It's part of the human spirit. It's uncorruptible in the sense of like something replacing it,
Exactly. It's kind of an intangible. I feel like there's this.
It is. You can't replicate
especially live art.
Especially live art. You can't replicate that connection. It's very divine, right? It's very spiritual. And so, the life of like doing songwriting and singing is like, first, I think stepping into understanding you have a calling for it. And even if you have a skill for it, if you don't have a calling for it, I don't think you should pursue it. But I think you have to have some knack to growing in that kind of creative approach, because it's like being a writer. Everyone can write, but are you a writer?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of that thing of like knowing, I think I have a way of being able to craft words and adding melody to it, even if you don't play an instrument, of being able to just to like being able to tell a story. And you have, I think, some of the best, if not the best storytellers out and around in Nashville. Is one of those cities in the world. And yeah, as I have lived pursuing and living this space here, it has to do with, yeah, like really, songwriting is a muscle. The people who are the best at it are the ones who do it all the time, and you do it for a very long time. And like almost any skill, right? And so the more you write, the better you write. And then you just build relationships and write with other people. There's a lot of co-writing sessions that happen all the time. And then, yeah, you get good at songwriting sessions are like team projects too. So you kind of, I look at them in that way. You kind of sit down with a group of people, or if it may be one or two or three people, and you try to define your role in the setting, and you work towards a common goal, and you throw out ideas, and you try to go with the flow of where the energy takes you in a space. And sometimes you come away with nothing. Sometimes you come away with something that's great. Sometimes you just come away with hanging out. I think I've come around, like some sessions you just share life. It's very interesting. So it's a very challenging life, but it's a very creatively expressive and collaborative life if you find the right people to do it with, for sure. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's so open-ended. It's about like just building the relationships and building the skill and finding ways to express that out and about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What was maybe one of the first things that you did to kind of insert yourself into the Nashville community?
First thing I did was to really try to establish a plan, even strategically for myself. Like I established my expectation of what I was trying to do here.
Oh, that's good.
I moved July of 2020. So like peak of pandemic, a very strange time to move to a new city, but a lot of people did it. And I tell people, I don't think I could have moved to a better city during that time, because Nashville was still kind of moving and shaking still. Things were shut down and capacity was limited. But for a city, and during the pandemic, it was fairly open. Like I in that first year, I played over 100 gigs still. Wow. And finding relationships and writing and stuff. And so I'm grateful to have moved to a city that was still churning creatively. And that has much to do with it for me. But I think when I think about it, just from a broad standpoint, I think of setting a plan, like really, really sitting down and be like, okay, what do I want to do here? Like, what are my skills that I bring to the table currently? What do I want to grow in? What does that look like to grow in? So I always lead with inspiration, but come with a plan,
That's
and
good.
I have my whiteboard up here that I wrote on of like building out, okay, like the SMART goals kind of strategy. That is, what's the S?
It's like specific, maybe?
Specific, measurable, attainable, and there's a timetable.
Yes.
Right? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So I approached it in that kind of way of like, okay, what is the high level vision, the mission? How I put it out there was like, I wanted to grow as a musician and my musicianship. Musicianship for me looked like as a cellist, doing session work for people, playing live shows with people, just growing it as an instrumentalist, and then growing as a songwriter and a singer, finding opportunities to write all the time, to co-write with people, and finding shows to play. And the other end of it, which is absolutely monumental as well, is growing in my community. And I really put that as a main focus, because it's who you know. In any space, in any profession, if you're not building the network and the relationships, you can only go so far. It only limits the amount of rooms you can get in. And that's what's opened doors for me, the people that know me and the relationships that I've been able to create and connect with. Just, it continues to trickle. So building the skill, knowing the right people, right? And kind of, then I had like smaller goals underneath them, right? Of like, okay, this month I'm going to have, I'm going to try to go play 5 shows this month. I'm going to get, 20 different co-writes in or something. It was very kind of number based, for the sense of me trying to have something to shoot for, to keep the activity going. And so, so that those are like some things I really did when I moved here, of like leading with inspiration and really, really sitting down and being like, okay, what does it look like for me to be intentional with my activity, and to, really set the expectation for what success looks like for me.
Yeah, kind of focusing in the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it allows you to fine tune where you put your energy, because it's so open ended. And then once you start going, I think the more activity you take, the more things happen. If things aren't happening, you're not doing enough activity. And you just got to go and ask questions and ask for help, especially if you're trying to break into a new space or a new industry. And so that's are some of the things I did.
That's awesome. And you were talking about the importance of community and kind of building that network and relationships with people. And I feel like even just meeting you tonight, like kind of feel like I've known you for forever, right?
I know.
I feel like
gone through a lot of stuff already.
So fun, right? But yeah, I feel like you have just kind of maybe a natural ability for that, like making connections with people. But are there any intentional ways that you approach creating new relationships and like, especially in the music world? Yeah,
it is an emotionally exhausting thing to try to put yourself out there a lot. And I'm grateful to, I have a big, ministry background that's focused on being with people and talking.
That's true. So, that is very prevalent, I guess, in ministry. That's like the point. It is.
If you're living in ministry, you know what it means to share life with people. And to get out there. And so I've done a lot of different things in my career before moving here where I was like, okay, I have the professional skills technically to build relationships and the experience and what it looks like to build a community and have focus and just be personable, And so I think you don't have to be an extrovert to be good at building relationships, but I think you have to be willing to talk and to get uncomfortable with how emotionally challenging it can be and not give up. I think the biggest thing is to not give up and keep showing up and and really leading with yourself. And for me, I always try to be very consistent, and as everyone ought to be, like being who you are in spaces and not trying to change and adapt the way you talk or the way, and sometimes that contextual variation of language you use can adapt and change, but and that's fine. But in terms of like your personality and just the character that you hold, and I think if you really hold true to, it's like if you are a more shy person, still be genuine and shake hands and say hi and ask questions. I think ask and then listen and then respond, ask, be good at asking questions is really good. Growing that skill. But I think being curious and knowing that I'll just kind of bookend it with this thought. I think relationship building has a lot to do with having a heart of curiosity and also being interested in why has God led me to these people in my life, and not overthinking it and thinking too deeply into every interaction. But I think having an openness and an open curiosity to this, you never know. Like if I go to this place tonight, you never know who I could meet. And having like an openness to the possibilities allows for you to kind of have some more energy to be like, okay, let me just get out this just for a little while, maybe tonight if I need to. It's challenging. You have to go out. You don't have to burn yourself out either. So have the balance, but having the open curiosity, that helps.
Such good wisdom. And I think that's so true as far as I think the people that are consistent across the board, on stage, off stage, green room, whatever it is, that I think there's a different like trust that people can build and trust that people can have with you. And then that helps build that connection, I think, on a deeper level. So that's awesome. Such good advice and wisdom. And one thought that came to mind for me too is just as you are getting into this, lifestyle, have there been some rhythms that have been helpful for you?
Ooh.
Or is every day pretty much different?
I think the hardest thing for me has been the lack of a rhythm, kind of. But I will say there has been rhythms. If the rhythm of not having a rhythm is a rhythm, that's a really steady rhythm. That doesn't make
that's kind of how sense. I feel in my life right now. I feel it.
Every day is different. But I think there are things, the rhythmic things are, I think, processes or just the things I can do to establish myself emotionally, spiritually on a daily basis, right? I feel like my challenge, one of my many challenges is really holding to, and I feel like I want to blame COVID for it, but it was before COVID, of having like a good daily morning routine, a rhythm, of establishing myself my quiet time with God, whatever that looks like, prayer time, different things.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do make a point to try to make that a regular thing. I don't do it every day, and it's frustrating. But when I am in a good space, and even the steadiness of trying to position myself to being prayerful all the time, even in that rhythm of being faithful and prayerful, even if it's not in a morning routine that I can never find to establish, which I'm trying to get there, and I know I can. It's just time and discipline, right? But I think finding a rhythm, even if it is an internal way of checking in, has been really important to me, of making sure I'm aligning myself with the things I know are true. And yeah, so I think it's hard to think of a rhythm that I've worked best outside of reminding myself of my goals. The intentionality of that is very important, of course, and reminding myself of the things that I stand for as a person, the things that God calls for me to stand for in scripture. And so, yeah, I think, and then, yeah, the check-ins, like really making sure that you're tuned in to how you're feeling is a rhythm that I really try to hold to, as broad as that sounds. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense for sure. Like, yeah. I totally understand.
Yeah. But yeah, life is so all over the place if you're living and freelancing.
For sure. For sure. You kind of have to roll with like what comes.
You do.
I'm curious, just from your perspective, being in Nashville the last few years, how are you seeing God at work in Nashville?
Good question.
And maybe music industry as well. Like,
sure.
Broadly.
I'm really grateful to be in Nashville and to experiencing the culture that is offered here. And I see God using Nashville as, I think when people come here, and if you're able to experience the culture, the creative culture, or like the community of the professionals that do live here, even kind of across industries, I think namely in the entertainment industry across the board, I think what you'll find is mostly an opportunity to collaborate, which I think is really special. While people in the entertainment world in general are, ego and pride is always, unfortunately, and greed is just at the root of it, unfortunately, a lot of times. But I think what I've come to find in my experience in consistently being here is God using Nashville as an example of like holding to establishing good values of hospitality. And really, trying to lean into the focus of God and the values of family and spirituality. I don't know. I think it may be just like a Southern thing too, a American Southern culture thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think as our world becomes, continues to roll in a progressive way from like a societal cultural value standpoint that leans to a subjective truth, concept and things, I really feel like Nashville holds to be a space that there are really strong roots that are founded in value and steadfastness of like divine truth in God. And it's cool to experience that, even like in the industry. Like obviously the Christian music industry is the biggest here in Nashville, while the Christian industry is a very, very, very small part of the music industry on a grand scale. I think there is a strong light and a very, very bright light from the Christian music industry being here and being highly skilled, and a lot of people really devoted to making it a powerful movement. Yeah. And that really, I'm grateful to have experienced that being with For King and Country.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Forefront of that. That's a crazy story getting to that, or like just a really incredible head scratching.
Yeah, how did that happen?
The For King stuff came out of nowhere. I've been friends with Joel, who's one of the brothers in the duo.
Yes. And by the way, have you been working on your Australian dialect?
I have not. Australian. And whenever I try to do an Australian accent, it turns into like a posh British one.
Yes, I understand that. That's pretty much.
I have not. So I will not attempt one here for the sake of not embarrassing myself. But you do pick up on it being around those guys a lot. And I think it's just a practice thing. So I think it's in there somewhere, me hearing it a lot. Yeah. In short, I met Joel and his wife, Mariah, at a mutual friend's wedding a couple of years ago, and just became friends of them and their family over time. We were both a part of the same church here in Nashville called Church of the City downtown.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Their cousin is the lead pastor at the campus I am at, with Church of the City. So there's a
Cool.
lot of small bones. That's their last name, small bones across Nashville, which is cool. They have a big
Mhm.
family. And yeah, I've just been friends with him. I collaborated with Joel and Moran on a Christmas project at the end of 2021, I think is what it is. And yeah, just been friends of them over time. And they kind of knew of me. I played cello on the worship team at church. And so they kind of know of my abilities and my skill as an artist and as a person. And March of this past spring, Joel had reached out to me about a position in the band that they're auditioning for that had just, they were, a lot of different, some changes happening in their band of late the last few years. And they're looking for specifically someone who could specialize in playing the cello, but also auxiliary instruments.
Gotcha.
Have you seen a For King and Country show before?
I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen a show live. I've definitely seen video, and I feel like
Oh,
my
cool.
parents have gone, so
Oh,
I'm not.
cool.
I don't know that I have
That's okay.
directly.
We're coming
But
to Toyota Center this year in Houston for
oh,
Christmas
okay,
tour. So keep an eye out. It's December maybe 13th or 12th or something like that. So keep an eye out. You
that's so
should come.
exciting!
You
Yes,
should
I
really
should
come.
totally come. That'd be
Yeah.
so fun, and
Yeah.
then I can
Yeah.
see you on stage, which would be so cool.
Yeah, it's so fun. So just let me
Yeah,
know. I'll email you the link and stuff, and let me know if you do make it so you can say hi.
that would be
Um,
amazing.
yeah, totally. And yeah, he asked me to audition, and I was grateful. Sent it in. They asked me to jump on board, and literally I had about a week and a half before our first show, before the spring tour started. So it was a really, really fast time to prepare, and it was a really crazy couple of weeks for me when they asked me to jump on, or when I auditioned, because that same week that I got asked to join was that weekend I was going to compete on Ninja Warrior. Yeah, so I competed on Ninja Warrior, got back, went to rehearsals. I actually competed on America's Got Talent this year too, which they
What?
unfortunately didn't show on TV. So they cut the producers cut me from the edit. It sucks.
Well, it's their last. I
It's
feel
their loss, but it went really well. But it was just like a crazy couple weeks where I auditioned, got it, did Ninja Warrior, rehearsals, America's Got Talent, and then jumped on the road for the spring tour. It was insane. And yeah, we jumped. The spring tour was about, I think, 36 shows across the country. There were 6 shows we did in Canada, and we were cranking. It was so much fun, and it's flown by. We had summer shows, festivals, state fairs we played at all through the summer, and we finished our last show last week, at least last week of
the time of the recording
time of
here.
this recording. And yeah, we're off until Christmas.
Okay.
And so yeah, time has just flown. That's kind of the story of how I got connected to the opportunity. It's crazy.
So cool. That's
Yeah, it's such a
amazing.
blessing.
I
Just
have
wow.
heard that they are just like high energy the entire time, like running.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
must be in really good shape. So,
No, it makes sense for me to be a part of this. It's like
yes.
it's like the closest connection that I can have to like a athletic team experience, but musical.
Exactly.
It's
That's so
wild
great.
how uncanny it is. But yeah, it's very high energy. There's big moments, and it's very
Yeah.
theatrical and performative. So
So
it's fun.
fun.
Yeah, so
Yes.
fun.
I'm so excited that you're part of that. And
Thanks.
we were talking before we started recording a little bit about your website. And
Mm,
I just really appreciate kind of how you are stewarding your platform. I feel like not only your website, but also social media and just any content that I see from you. I'm like, I don't know, it just feels very
thanks.
authentic, probably to who you are from what I know of you in the last hour,
That's
but
awesome.
also to your faith. And so I'm just curious, what has that been like stewarding a platform from a faith perspective?
Seeing a platform from a faith perspective. It's a great question. I like how you phrased it. For me, it's been because I have a lot of interests and I've explored a lot of different kind of spaces professionally and just activity wise. My challenge has been really trying to kind of hone it in and kind of make it more specialized. But I think it is kind of just my story. It's kind of like my life, like just embracing me for me and that being my brand, like the journey, the exploration that my life has taken so far, being the platform that I have. And for me, it does come down to realizing that I have something to offer. I have a story to tell, and I have an opportunity to impact my listeners, whoever that may be, on a day-to-day basis, social media wise, and especially being in an industry that is very all about kind of marketing myself.
Yeah. That's true.
Really embracing it for what it is, but and the challenge of that is like trying not to allow that to become a comparative thing,
Mm.
and not get, stuck in bad habits of being on my phone all the time, which is one of my Achilles heels, of being on my phone too much. But I think it is not being afraid to embrace the technology and utilize that space to share the things I'm learning. And yeah, I think there's more impact than we think we have. There's a lot more eyes on us than we think we have, and we have the ability to really influence in so many ways. And so I think just working to be consistent but I think being authentic, being honest, and being okay with sharing, like, not just all the highlights. And it's easy just to share the highlights, and that's fine if you do. But I think you can have a stronger impact if you just show the humanity of and humility. Yeah. And that's what the real impact comes from, like connection through showing the authentic humanity of yourself. And I'm learning that time and time again.
Yeah. So good. And I encourage people, direct people where they can find you on social media and stuff at the end. Totally. But yeah, definitely encourage people to check it out and just see some of the fun, videos that you're posting and the work that you're doing, collaborating with other artists and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, maybe last main question before we wrap up. What have been maybe one or two of the most faith building moments for you in this journey?
Yeah. When you dive into something new, I think you gotta be open-handed, like what we had talked about. And you really need to take in the feedback that you receive from things, good and bad. Like if you're pounding the pavement in this area and the feedback isn't as what you liked, take that in and use that as ammunition to redirect or to inform a different decision or different choice for something. And I think a faith building moment as being able to see, I think the For King opportunity is one of the biggest that stands out for sure. I think it's a lot of micro things that kind of have built up over time. I'll say the two things that stand out is the For King opportunity is a big expression of something I didn't expect to happen. Honestly, I have a lot of high expectations for where I can go and how much I can grow as a creative and as a musician. And I had very hopeful expectations that I'd be able to find my way into a big space like that eventually, like on a big stage with a team like that. It has surprised me how soon it happened, if you will. I don't know. I felt like while I've been doing a lot of work and preparing myself to take on opportunities, you just never know when opportunity will strike. And to me, that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, man, I feel so grateful. And the imposter syndrome thing kind of kicks in too.
Oh yeah.
So I think that has been a really faith moving experience for sure. And I'm a part of another creative community here called Songhouse.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
If you look up online, look up Songhouse Co., like on Instagram, TikTok, all the things, you'll see what it looks like. But I've been a part of it since before it started and from the get go. And it's been cool just to be a part of a community that's grown so much. That my landlord / close friend and my roommate, they both lead it, and I'm a part of our internal team. But I've been grateful to be a part of just that community and that family that it is, and to see, to see what God can do in a short amount of time with the right people in place is very, very encouraging. And it is all about relationships and authenticity and creativity. And yeah, so I think just reflecting on it all has been those seeing Songhouse become what it is now through strategic work of people on the team, but also just, the very mysteriousness that being in Nashville, being around these kind of people, what that can turn into, and then being connected to For King and Country, very, very faith-filling experiences. But yeah, I think everything adds up in the end.
Yeah, that's so true. And like you were saying earlier, something that can seem so small could be the thing that leads to, that opportunity you couldn't have imagined. So
absolutely.
So cool.
I have no clue, as we all do. We have no clue what we're doing. We're just doing the best we can with what we have.
That's super what I tell encouraging people, to hear you say that.
I'm just I know what I'm passionate about, and I know the things that I know, and I'm working to try to not be an idiot with the things I do and the people that I share my life with. And, you just roll the punches. Life is just so mysterious. Mysterious has been one of my go-to words.
Yes, so good.
It's like, I don't know. I don't
That's
know.
funny. And I'll give a quick shout out to Michael Cash, who introduced us.
Michael Cash. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah.
He's
How
a connector.
did y'all meet? Was it through being in Houston,
Man.
Missouri City?
Me and Michael Cash met initially through another mutual friend of ours named David Gamboa. I don't know if you know David Gamboa. Do you know David?
And he was just on the podcast with Micah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
David, I know David from high school in San Antonio. We went to the same high school in San Antonio. He moved to Houston. I forgot when. I think after he graduated high school for sure. And then when I moved to Houston for college, we ended up kind of just keeping touch just online a little bit. He invited me to Sugarland Family Church where he was at.
That's where I go. Yeah, that's where you go. I remember there.
Let's go. And I forget what it was. I think it was actually to do some cello stuff for like a Christmas thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And this is pre-music Gabe. I mean, I was musical, but this was like pre-professional music Gabe. I was still playing cello enough to like get asked to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's where I met Michael Cash. I met at a Christmas service there. And then I think I had jumped in at Sugarland Family for a couple other kind of things like that when I was in Houston. And we've kind of just been in touch virtually in that kind of way. And I think social media has the beauty of being able to like still keep tabs on people, even if you're not really, really kind of in touch, which is a beauty of social media. So you can kind of still, and obviously we still connected. And so that's cool that he connected us. I forgot that was the connection. That's awesome.
Yeah, so cool. So cool.
So cool.
As we wrap up today, I like to ask everyone that comes on the show, is there something on your heart you'd like to share with other artists right now?
I recently joined a small group in connection to my church called Restore Small Groups. Restore subtitle small groups. And it is a beautiful kind of intimate group that is focused on growth and recovery and moving through changes in your life and kind of taking out the old and bringing in the new and like stepping into breaking down old systems and things that don't serve you well anymore, but to say the least. And so it's a small group setting. It's faith-based. And I share that there's a book that we've been reading and there's this beautiful quote in it that said something to the effect, I want to quote it correctly, but I think it says, I sent it to someone. Let me see what it was.
Oh, nice.
It said, God uses our stories to offer hope to others. The thing on my heart to share to artists and creatives is that we all have a story to share. And God wants us to put it out there, whatever that looks like. If you're a dancer, really being out there to share your expression creatively and your skill, and then being able to communicate with others as well, the journey that you're in, or if you're a painter, if you're a singer or a songwriter, if all the different things you can be in the artist world, right? But we all have a story to tell, and you have the ability to instill hope. And so hold on to that and lean into that. Lean into your skill and share it. Keep sharing. Yes. Regardless of what the algorithm says, share your story.
So good. Yes. So good. And last fun question is, what is one of your favorite things right now?
Oh, good. That's a fun question. One of my favorite things right now. Oh, I have so many things I enjoy doing.
You can throw out more than one if you want. It's fine. Sometimes it's hard to narrow down to one.
There's too many streamers out there in terms of streaming channels.
Yes.
I love TV shows. I love movies. I love finding a good new show that is either like a sci-fi or a thriller or a mystery based thing and just like being immersed in that world. That's one of my favorite things.
Love it.
And Nashville is in a really scenic area. And one of my favorite things is to be outdoors. There's also a lot of bugs here, so you can get bitten up a lot. That's not my favorite thing. Yeah. But I love trying to take advantage of any opportunity just to really, really be outside. Me and my roommate started fishing a little bit more, which is really fun. And so fishing has been a cool thing. I'll leave with those two things: finding a good show and being outside.
Perfect. Love it so much. Well, Gabe, this has been such a gift, and just have loved getting to know you over this last hour, and would love to let people know like the places to find you
Yeah,
Honestly,
totally.
it's not too challenging because you're on
Not too
Spotify,
challenging. Yeah, I
all
try
those
to keep
things. But
it
what's the
pretty
best way?
simple. The best way is I'm really active on Instagram. So if you're there, you can look up the Gabe Baker, THE, Gabe, short for Gabriel, Baker, like the pastries. And then my website is gabebaker.com. And you should be able to find everything else kind of that way on Spotify, Apple Music. It's Gabe Baker as well. Just kind of keep it all there. And yeah, you could be able to check it all out that way.
Yes. I feel like there were so many things we could talk about.
Yes.
Like some of your songs and the lyrics and
Oh,
really
the
excellent.
songs. Thank you.
But yes, there's the one Nashville, Tennessee.
Tennessee, like sea, like the water. That's right. It's a good old lyrical flip.
So good. Yeah. So y'all just need to check it out and just know it's like amazing and so many fun like music videos and things. So yes. So thank you for your work. Thank you for sharing your heart with us tonight or today, whenever people are listening. And just keep doing what you're doing. I'm just so encouraged by how God is at work through your life and in Nashville and kind of the music industry. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Well,
thank you for having me, Rachel. Keep on with your podcast and story sharing, and you're doing a great job. So thank
you. You can find all the links, full show notes, and additional resources on our website, creativeimpactpodcast.com. If you're interested in supporting the show, some great ways to do that are to share it with a friend, to rate and review wherever you're listening. And then also, if you're interested in giving financially, you can check out our Patreon community, where you get bonus content each month and have a special part in helping make this podcast possible. You can access our Patreon community on the link at our website or by going to creativeimpactpodcast.com/PATREON. Thank you all so much for listening to the Creative Impact Podcast. The music for the show was produced by Michael Cash. Until next time, remember that you were designed to create. You were made to inspire. Continue living with purpose and making an impact. I'll see you next time, friends.